Sorry about that. The problem with technology, we often forget to press the buttons that allow us to start. Good morning once again, ladies and gentlemen, from wherever you are watching us. Thank you for joining us at the launch of the 18th Uganda Economic Update. My name is Josephine Karungi, and I'll be emceeing the event that promises to deliver quite a lot. We have a lot in store for you, but to begin, we'd like to, first of all, invite all of those who are joining us from online. There are a couple of people in the room with us that will be part of the presenters, but we also have some guests with us, members of the media. Thank you for joining us. And to everybody that's present here, thank you for taking the time to share this morning with us as we launch the 18th Uganda Economic Update. As we start the launch of the event, I'd like to very quickly introduce the World Bank Country Manager for Uganda, who will be making the opening remarks that will start us off for the event that is going to take at least 2 hours. So Ms. Mukami, you're very welcome. Ms. Mukami Kariuki will be sharing the opening remarks.
Thank you very much, and good morning to everybody. Honorable Betty Amongi, Minister of Gender, Labor and Social Development, senior government officials present, members of parliament, members of the diplomatic community, distinguished panelists and guests, ladies and gentlemen joining us online and in person. I'd like to thank you all for being here with us today as we launch our biannual flagship report, the Uganda Economic Update. In this 18th edition, the update outlines recent economic developments, provides an outlook for the macroeconomy, and also delves into a special topic on women's economic empowerment, with an emphasis on putting women at the center of Uganda's economic revival. According to the update, Uganda's economy was recovering well up until the second wave of COVID-19 infections and the subsequent lockdown in May 2021. The good news is that activity has rebounded since, though the country is still likely to face a stop-start recovery until there's wider coverage of the COVID-19 vaccine to allow full reopening of the economy. Thus, to ensure an inclusive recovery, faster deployment and widespread coverage of the vaccine is necessary and critical. School reopening with adequate safeguards to minimize disease transmission is also critical. Support for micro, small, and medium enterprises must also be prioritized to allow them to get back on their feet for job creation during the recovery. And finally, prudent and transparent fiscal and debt management must be maintained. Notwithstanding this recent recovery, there's been a rise in poverty and increased household vulnerability. Also, widening of inequalities, particularly in the education sector, where schools have now been partially or fully closed for what is seen by some as the longest period globally. Ladies and gentlemen, women who account for the majority of micro, small, and medium enterprises have been significantly affected by the COVID pandemic, undermining the gains made through efforts such as UWEP in the past. As a result, Uganda has a long way to go in its quest to build back better and fast, and the country's economic recovery agenda will need to place women's economic empowerment at the center to quicken and strengthen Uganda's revival. Global experience shows that increasing women's rates of labor force participation, wage employment, earnings, access to productive assets, and the ability to make independent decisions brings immediate benefits to women and contributes to more sustained growth. In a nutshell, women's economic empowerment is not just the right thing to do, nor is it simply a core development objective. It is also smart economics. Uganda already has much that can be built on. It has relatively high female labor force participation, some of the highest levels of women or female entrepreneurship in the world, and it is nearing gender parity in financial inclusion. However, a long history of gender disparities in educational attainment, occupational gender segregation, and heavy family care responsibilities, all exacerbated by the COVID-19 shock, continue to limit women's movement into more skilled and better paid jobs and sectors. This deprives the economy of their contributions and threatens progress in maximizing Uganda's human capital in the quest to transition the economy away from its dependence on subsistence agriculture and towards the NDP3 goal of industrialization. Uganda is at a pivotal stage on its development path, and the potential gains from investing in women's economic empowerment are sizable. The World Bank Group is working to make sure that our support for countries' response and recovery packages addresses the different impacts on women and girls, which is an essential step to sustainable recovery. We therefore look forward to working with you all to accelerate the pace of inclusive and sustainable development and to ensuring economic growth returns at least to the pre-COVID levels in the coming years. Let me thank Honorable Betty Amongi, Minister of Gender, Labor and Social Development, for sparing her time to be the chief guest today, and all the panelists for accepting to be with us and to speak to you today. Let me turn to a quick introduction. Honorable Betty Amongi, who is currently with us today, was a former Minister of Lands, Housing and Urban Development, and also MP since 2001. She therefore brings a lot of experience dealing with a wide range of issues that affect women, and will be here to launch this product with us today and to impart some of that wisdom. So let me pass on the floor to you, Honorable Amongi.
Is it okay if I speak with a mask? The MC? It's okay? Yes. Because I saw the two spoke without a mask. So I can choose to speak with a mask, trusting that the two do not have COVID. Or you bring for me a sanitizer. Help me, this one has a sanitizer. My farmer here. Thank you very much. Those who are here, the country rep of World Bank and all the team here. I want to first congratulate the World Bank that with this stringent COVID-19 SOPs, you still managed to undertake assessment and able to come with this report, which is an annual report on the economic outlook of our country, and most especially focusing on women. And I am honored to address you at the launch of this 18th edition of the Uganda Economic Update by the World Bank, titled Putting Women at the Center of Uganda's Economic Revival. This theme is very important. It corresponds well with the government of Uganda's strong and progressive legal and policy framework and programs, which also puts women at the center of development in this country. I am glad that this 18th edition of the Uganda Economic Update by the World Bank is coming at a time when the government of Uganda is focusing on supporting the private sector for economic recovery. As you are aware, government of Uganda just 3 days ago announced through Ministry of Finance a small medium enterprise matching grant where we have put 100 billion shillings, and this is for the recovery of the small medium enterprises. And women's enterprises are majorly the small and medium enterprises. And this financing has already started for purpose of the recovery. And from the speech of Excellency, the manager, country manager, World Bank, he indicated that there has been recovery. Uganda has been on a recovery trend, and it has rebounded irrespective of the COVID-19. So I think we need to congratulate ourselves that irrespective of that, we continue to grow. As you're aware, the tourism sector is picking up, and again in recovery, and with the prudent management of our President, His Excellency the President, the vaccination exercise is ongoing, and school recovery and school, majority of the school children are also getting vaccinated, and we hope that when we open fully in January, we will rebound even more and go towards a little bit of more robust economic program, both for women and the rest of the country. The 18th edition of the Uganda Economic Update by the World Bank is also coming at a time when we, as Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development, are focusing on programs that should target women at the rural level. Of course, the effect of COVID-19 is noted. The pandemic continues to present challenges to the economy with the gross domestic targets, which should be met, going a little bit down, but many businesses which are winding up are also shifting to other form of businesses. I'm glad that actually people are looking at other businesses for those that have not been opened. As you are aware, now there are so many online services. So people have moved to other form of businesses. You can sit and order food. I get so interested that my kids can be able to order food and breakfast. Imagine ordering breakfast on a Sunday when and Javas will be there on the doorstep delivering. I don't know how they do it, but they do it. So people have now gone to online. People are selling tomatoes online. People are selling vegetables online. You sit and then you order tomatoes, onions, and they're on your doorsteps. So I think there has also been that aspect of the good aspect of COVID-19 that we are now moving to. Of course, women who are majority employees in the informal sector have been negatively affected. For example, saloons and bars had been closed for a long time, and they employ sizable women. Saloons now are open, bars are not yet open, but we are hoping in January it will open. Global experiences shows that increasing women's rates of labor force participation and wage employment, earnings, access to productive assets, ability to make independent decisions, bring immediate benefits for women and contribute to more sustainable economic growth. Women's economic empowerment is smart economy and key in facilitating the recovery of the economy. And that's why it is important that in the recovery program, we must put women at the center of the recovery. And through our Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development, we are implementing some flagship programs, and some of them have already yielded results. You know about OWEP, you've talked about the Youth Livelihood Program, the expanding of social protection, which is called SAGE, the disability grant, which actually now is a 9.6 billion grant for disabled people, and we send it to the district. It's not that you have to access it from here. We have the Green Jobs and Fair Labor Market Program. This one gives startup kits. We also have skilling programs where we are now encouraging women and girls who got pregnant in these 2 years and they are not able to go back to school. We are skilling them on bakery. We are training them on issues related to saloon. We are training them on tailoring and any other skilling aspect that can support them. And of course, we are now looking at how do the skills be supported with startup capital and startup kits and tools. These initiatives enable our women to access support and improve their livelihoods. Also, government, as you are aware, has established the parish development model, which is aimed at giving financial services to the parish women. This money will go at a parish level. Parish is the second most grassroots level which congregate villages. And when we passed this in cabinet, as Minister of Gender, we made a proposal to have a reserve quota of this money for women, and cabinet adopted, and now 30% of money at a parish level is reserved for women to access. Then another 30% is reserved for the youth to access, which means there are also female youth that will access. We are now looking at least a minimum of 40% of that money going at the parish will be accessed by women. And again, my ministry has been given the task to mobilize the women, the youth, the persons with disability, and the older person to benefit from this grant. Government has given us money to start this community mobilization and mindset change before that money is given to the population. So through implementation of this program, it is clear that we will move to more steady recovery, especially for the women. Of course, we still have challenges which needs to be addressed. We are looking at supporting women in technology transfer. The appropriate technology is very important at the rural area. Sometimes you have women with the farming, but they want to add value. They want to package. They want to market. And these are issues that we are now looking at. Issues of standardization. There are women who want to export. The other day, people in the UAE came and said they want 10,000 tons of pineapple every month. But they said, we want it like this. You must package it like this. You must clean it like this. You must do, it must be ripe, not very ripe. This should be the, so that's standardization. Then there are people who came and said, we want avocado, ash avocado, but we want it to be tested. And those laboratories are still only maybe in Kampala. So those standardization that women will be able to standardize their product is very important to strengthen market linkages, to even give them information on where the market is. Because we have rural women. Sometimes people want their product, but they are not aware of the market. So the middlemen will try to benefit from the women. So market issue, strengthening partnership and engagement, and prioritizing more financial cheap capital for the women are areas that we are looking at. So I am excited that government of Uganda, through the Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development, with support from the World Bank, is also processing a very fundamental and important empowerment project called GLOW. And this project is meant to enable women access finance, enable them develop enterprises and social inclusion and infrastructure facilities. This will help women who are not at the rural level benefiting from the parish development model. This financing will support them to refocus on their businesses. We are optimistic that this project will even contribute more to economic recovery for women. I therefore would like to thank the World Bank for this 18th Uganda Economic Update, which not only makes assessment on women issue, but also the overall economic recovery assessment for Uganda based on the impact of COVID-19. And I'm glad that the report indicates that the country is rebounding, and with the hope that the school recovery, opening of the economy in January will make even more economic updates and economic recovery and revival for our country more real. The report also provides evidence on critical constraints, strategy to harness the economic potential of women for a stronger and more sustainable economic recovery. I therefore want to request that this very important report should be disseminated to our members of parliament, to cabinet, and to all MDAs, so that it supports their evidence-based programming and policy as we move towards designing mechanisms of harnessing economic recovery. I want, on behalf of the government of Uganda, to reaffirm our commitment to promotion of gender equality, empowerment for all women and girls, and most importantly, that government is committed to the economic recovery after the long lockdown due to COVID-19 pandemic effects. We count on your continued support towards the delivery of both the economic recovery and gender equality and women's empowerment, while we pay special attention to financial inclusion and women's economic justice. I want to thank you. And the MC wanted me to launch. Where is the report? You have to bring it, and I feel it. On behalf of the women, I've seen the PS of health is here. Come. I can't launch alone when the World Bank. Yes, okay.
Richard, if you'd like to come. Richard is one of the authors of the report. The other two authors are joining us live. So we'll insert them in the picture somehow. But Fatma, maybe if you'd like to join the picture, since you will be on the web panel. And Ruth. All right.
Since the PS is here. So on behalf of the World Bank, I want to now declare that the Uganda Economic Update Report 18th edition, entitled Putting Women at the Center of Uganda Economic Revival, is duly launched. So I ran away, and at least I leave here two powerful women from government.
Thank you very much, Honorable. I hope you don't leave your copy of the report behind, since you are going to be our first ambassador. Here it is. Honorable. Keeping with the program, thank you very much, Honorable. Honorable has some other business to attend to, so she will be leaving us. But we'll continue with our program, and I would like to invite Mr. Richard Walker, a senior economist with the World Bank, to present the state of Uganda's economy, part 1 of the economic update. Richard? We'll be playing a video where Richard shared the findings in his report to the findings of that report.
Good morning and welcome to the launch of the 18th edition of the Uganda Economic Update, with the special topic of putting women at the center of Uganda's economic revival. My name is Richard Walker. I'm a senior economist at the World Bank and one of the authors of the report. The presentation today will be structured in two parts. Part 1 I'll present on the state of the economy with several key messages. My colleagues Margarita and Jen will then present Part 2 on the special topic, along with several key messages. Part 1, State of the Economy. A two-track global economic recovery is underway. As you can see from this chart on the right, countries in Europe and North America have already fully vaccinated about 50% or more of their population. This is compared to countries in Africa, including Uganda, that have only vaccinated about 5% or less of their populations. As a result, and as you can see from this chart on the left, developed countries are expected to lead the growth recovery. You see over the next couple of years, average growth rates in China to be over 6%, in the US over 4%, compared to average growth rates in sub-Saharan Africa of about 3.5%. Now, although Uganda is expected to do better at about 4% average growth rates, you have to remember that population growth in these countries are far higher. And as a result, per capita growth will likely be closer to zero or even negative in some instances. The second message we have today is that Uganda's economy was recovering. As you can see from this chart, particularly the area in the red dashed lines, which shows 2020, following the negative and close to zero growth rates through the quarters of 2020, in the first half of this calendar year, you see there has been this improved performance with growth reaching almost 14%. And this was largely driven by the strong revival in services and industry. What's concerning, however, is the performance of the agriculture sector, which, although relatively robust through the initial stages of the crisis, has certainly slowed down. And this is worrying given the share of the workforce and of households in Uganda that have relied on agriculture, particularly as a safety net through this crisis. This recovery has largely been driven by growth in consumption and investment. This chart shows the annual performance or outcome. You can see how following the decline in growth to 3% in FY20, there was this marginal increase to 3.4% in FY21, which was driven by an increase in consumption as demand conditions improved in the country, as well as an uptick in investment, particularly public sector investment, which grew by over 20% in FY21 compared to 4% in FY20. At the same time, however, there was the strong recovery in imports, much stronger than the recovery in exports. And as a result, there was a sharp decline in net exports, which really tempered the growth performance in FY21 to an extent. Although this led to a deterioration in the current account deficit, there were some positive signs in the external sector. So as shown by this chart on the right, you can see firstly the blue line, the recovery in travel inflows compared to the sharp decline in FY20, the stabilization and slight recovery in remittances, the continued strong performance in gold exports, and the sustained strong performance of coffee exports throughout the crisis. Now, this is all before the second COVID wave. As you can see from this chart, which gives a sense of business conditions measured by the Purchasing Managers Index, conditions really deteriorated significantly during the two lockdowns. So you can see the sharp decline in the middle of 2020 and another sharp decline in the middle of 2021 during the lockdown period. And as a result of this, growth in the early part of fiscal year 2022 has slowed down. And as a result, the expectation for this fiscal year is that growth is going to be about 3.8% compared to the initial expectation of about, depending on non-farm family businesses, about 46% were still earning less from those businesses than before the COVID crisis. And this was in April this year, just before the second wave and lockdown. And just to emphasize that female-owned micro and small enterprises have been the hardest hit through the COVID crisis, many of whom have been forced into subsistence agriculture. And this will be explored further by my colleagues in the second part of the presentation. At the same time, threats to human capital loom large. This chart just gives a sense of the share of children that were either attending school, the blue bars, or engaged in any learning activity, including attending school, the orange bars. What you can see is that in total, about 41% of children, and this is now in April 2021, 41% of children were engaged in any learning activity, including attending school. This compares to about 84% of children that attended school before the first lockdown. This declines to 38% in rural areas, and further to about 28% for the poorest Ugandans. This means that only 28% of children who live in the poorest households are actually engaged in any kind of learning activity at the moment. As a result, the other share of these children are either doing nothing, are engaged in household chores, or are also trying to earn an income from really marginal activities to help augment the household income. This will certainly have detrimental effects for future productivity as well as economic growth. And my colleagues will also talk about the particular impact on girls of this crisis and getting girls back into schools. Yet government's fiscal space has seemingly been exhausted to support the vulnerable, boost the recovery, and respond to any further shocks. As can be seen by this chart, the fiscal deficit has increased quite considerably from about 4%, I'm looking at the right-hand side axis, from about 4% in FY18 to about 9% or over 9% in FY21. And this has really been driven by the divergence of the blue line, which shows tax revenues, which have remained relatively flat at about 12% of GDP, looking at the left-hand side axis, and the red line, which has increased quite considerably from about 17% of GDP to over 24%. This shows the red line showing expenditures. The dashed lines show the projected revenues and expenditures in the FY20 medium-term fiscal framework, which is really prior to the COVID crisis. And the expectation was actually this convergence in FY21, which would have led to a lower fiscal deficit. Now, given this expansion in the fiscal deficit, there has been this surge in public debt from about 27% in FY15 to almost 50% in FY21. At the same time, there are now heightened liquidity pressures, and this is due to the increased reliance on non-concessional external financing, as well as increased domestic borrowing, which has led to an increase in the ratio of interest to revenue from about 11% to about 20%. To such an extent that interest spending exceeded government spending on both education and health in FY21. Looking forward, better borrowing decisions will need to be made, including greater use of concessional debt and better matching of projects to appropriate financing. But if well implemented, there are policies to turn this around. Firstly, there are several public financial management reforms ongoing. There's a new domestic revenue mobilization strategy. There are also several initiatives to improve debt management, debt transparency, to ensure appropriate financing sources are used to fund projects. And there are a raft of measures to ensure that government spending is improved and more effective and more efficient, that procurement is undertaken in a more transparent and competitive way, and the environment is protected through Uganda's development process. So that resources are sourced, collected, allocated, and spent effectively, and key priorities and programs delivered successfully, and ultimately to ensure fiscal sustainability. Looking forward, an uncertain stop-start recovery is expected. This table just gives a baseline scenario. So what you see is real GDP growth increasing from about 3.4% in FY21 to between 5 to 6% in FY23. You see inflation slowly picking up from about 2.5%, moving closer towards the inflation target of about 5%. We expect a recovery in foreign direct investment as activity picks up in the oil sector. The fiscal deficit is expected to drop quite sharply to about 4% of GDP in FY23 as government executes its fiscal consolidation agenda. And as a result, the rise in public debt is expected to be more modest. However, even though we have this baseline scenario, we still expect real GDP per capita to be below target, below the NDP3 target over the course of the next few years. And as a result, this will mean it will take longer for Uganda to now reach lower middle income status. At the same time, there are several risks to this scenario. Firstly, the evolution of the pandemic in Uganda and globally, the reliance on a very slow and uncertain vaccination program. There's also always the continual threat from weather shocks to Uganda and what this does to the farming sector, to exports, to overall economic growth. There are concerns that revenues will remain low. There will be these spending pressures and that Uganda's debt profile may deteriorate. And as a result, there'll be uncertainty around macroeconomic stability. There's also uncertainty regarding global and regional factors. How long will it take for trade to recover? How much more stimulus can advanced countries provide? How long until tourists start traveling again? These are all important questions for Uganda's economic recovery. On the upside, though, there are a few things worth mentioning. Commodity prices have recovered well, which bodes well for key Ugandan exports as well as for activity in the oil sector. The digital economy and digital solutions continue to provide ways of doing business, of getting by in this uncertain time. And there's also great potential for women, Ugandan women, to drive the recovery, but only if they are given fair and equal opportunities to reach their full potential. My colleagues Jen and Margarita will now discuss this further and look at what will be required to put women at the center of Uganda's economic revival.
Thank you very much, Richard. So Jen and Margarita will discuss part 2 of the economic update a little later on. First, we want to get into a hard talk panel discussion that looks critically at the things that Richard has just shared with us in the state of the economy. So I'll introduce Ms. Ruth B. Nzikamusoke, who is the head skills development facility with the Private Sector Foundation, and she'll be our moderator for the panel discussion that's going to follow. Richard, who is the author of the report, will be joining in on that discussion to answer any questions relating to what he shared. Ruth, over to you.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Wow. Yes. Good morning, everybody. And those that are watching us, I want to thank Richard for the presentation, and I think it has really put us ahead on the issues that are really happening since COVID, because this is a key discussion that a number of business people want to hear, and also policymakers as well want to hear. On this hard talk discussion, we definitely have Richard, and I think you have seen he's the same guy with the same tie, so he was just on the screen, but he's here. He actually did the presentation, and we have him. Please mark the tie. And we'll be joined by Dr. Diana Atwine. Dr. Diana has been doing a lot of commendable work during COVID. She's one of our women fighters that have been fighting hard to make sure that Uganda is able to be safe during even the hardest time. And we want to thank you, Dr. Diana, for the work hardly done. You know, it's not so easy. And I said that COVID taught us that we need to recognize the foot soldiers. When all of us were at home sleeping, Dr. Diana was working so hard. Thank you very much, Dr. Diana. And I want to also invite John Walugembe from the the Federation of Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises. John has been, if you talk about SMEs, I think you see him around all the time. He's been really talking hard on ensuring that SMEs are supported. And I know that the current fund that we've just received, John has been behind, talking so much, where is the money? And I hope, John, that the money has come. Then we need to see how other businesses changing and something is happening, because we need to also thank the government for that particular initiative. Ladies and gentlemen, we have had the presentation, and I want to applaud the bank for this particular update. We needed it, we needed reference, and now we have it. And I know it's going to be circulated as wide as possible. I want to start with Dr. Diana Atwine. You saw the reports, and you know what is happening currently. I want to say that all of us are having goosebumps about the COVID variants, the new one that is coming up, but also there have been challenges in the slow response on the vaccination. And I know that you've been doing a lot of work on the overall COVID response. And we know that the economy is opening up January. Somebody was asking me, how would they open? Would the president get the key and just open? People are so excited about it. I don't know what would happen. And the schools are opening. So, Dr. Twine, it will be very interesting to hear from you. How is the government, through your ministry, how is it getting ready to ensure that we are able to combat all these challenges and the issues that I've raised?
I want to thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this panel to discuss the issues of COVID, but also the economic recovery as far as women is concerned. It is true that we have there is a global, now crisis. There is a panic. As you have seen, different countries have closed, their flights from Southern Africa, and there's so much rage out there. People think that actually they have been treated unfairly because Omicron is not only it was not found in Southern Africa alone. We know that there are a number of countries in Europe, and even today the numbers keep on increasing. So it was not really the right thing. First of all, we as Uganda, you have noted that we have not issued a statement yet. We don't want to panic, and that's who we are, and we want to first study the pathogenesis. How is this virus behaving? Is it a severe form? Does it cause? Because they've just discovered that there's a variant. In Uganda here we have variants. They keep on changing. This virus, like any other viruses, they keep on changing all the time. So what really matters is to study the characteristic of this virus and to see because they've just discovered it. So we don't know. We don't have any statistics of its severity or pathogenicity. So until we know that, then we will guide. But for now, as a country, we are emphasizing on two things. The first one is to ensure that everyone gets vaccinated, and that is baseline. Whether we have 20 variants, whether we have one variant, the bottom line message is that we need protection. And the science doesn't tell lies. When you get vaccinated, even now, we see that people who are still coming to us who are sick, who are coming to the hospitals, are the people who are not vaccinated. Those that even test positive right now and they were vaccinated, they get very mild disease. And that is the message that all of us have to sound. And I want to thank the civil society. And really we want civil society to take on this role because they reach the people and continue sounding this message. Because government alone cannot do this. Private sector has been supporting. but only here in Kampala. But we want to see this rolled out because that is the key to economic recovery. All these statistics we are seeing here being presented can only change if we open up. How do we open up? If we get vaccinated and then we live into the new normal of COVID. Post-COVID, we are not going to run away from COVID. It might stay here with us. It might be like any other virus that we have. When HIV had just come, there was a lot of panic that witchcraft, blah, blah. But now we have tamed HIV. This one, of course, is more effective, more serious. But we do believe that once our population gets vaccinated, we'll be able to bring down the infections. We'll be able to open freely the economy. The schools will open. The trade will boom. Even with the sickness, people will get flu like any other, and they will recover. And that is the message we want to emphasize today, and to everyone who is listening, that there is no shortcut to economic recovery as we stand now in this country and globally until we embrace vaccine and we make sure that we get vaccinated. Actually, we are looking even at the booster dose, because actually many people now in Kampala who got vaccinated in March, they are saying, but I think our antibodies have gone down. Can we come for the booster and all that? But we are saying, no, first wait until we cover the other people who have not gotten the vaccine. So that's number one. Number two is prevention. Prevention message is not just to talk about vaccination alone. Prevention is mask. This mask. Social distancing. Yes, life has changed, man. We can't even hug. We can't. Life is just difficult. But we have to accept that now this is the way to go. So we must maintain the SOPs in place. Because we do not know the variants as they keep on coming. We do not know which one even will not be responding to the vaccine. So the best is to maintain the discipline of prevention. That is the most important thing. But on the vaccination, of course we have seen, at first there was hesitance. We had so many theories and myths about the vaccines. We've been trying to talk to the population, and we want to continue talking about it so that we remove all these, we demystify all the myths that are out there, so that people accept the vaccination. Right now we have administered about 6.9 million doses. And right now we have enough vaccines actually in the country. So the problem is not now the supply. Before it was the supply, but now it is no longer the supply. So we call upon everyone really to embrace this.
I actually wanted to ask you, why is it that we have issues with vaccination? I think that is that we are opening up the economy. Your target was 20 million vaccinated.
22 million.
22 million. We are at 6.9 million, which is hardly 50%. What do we have to do?
No, it is actually, that is like half, because those are doses we have administered.
The two?
About 7.
Okay.
Of course, some information is still not yet entered into the system. So we could be talking about 8 million doses administered.
Okay. And
that is 4 million. That is a very small percentage compared to the target that we want to get. The hesitance is the myths. We still have myths. We have all these mixed messages.
Yeah.
When our people go on the internet and they see, anti-vax sentiment somewhere, and then they pick also that and they move with it. But I do believe that where we are going with this, because I've seen ever since they talked about Omicron, people have started panicking now, even those ones that were not, they were in their comfort zone, now they are coming, they are demanding to be vaccinated.
I want to bring in Richard and John, but I wanted to ask you something very interesting. You know what happened when we first locked down? You know the date? You don't remember?
I do remember.
You remember?
Yes.
What was the date?
Wasn't it 18?
What did you feel
18th
as
of
the
March.
PS minister? You are the chief technical officer in the Ministry of Health. What did you feel?
I felt horrible.
Really?
Yes, I felt.
And what came to your mind?
Because everybody was blaming Ministry of Health. That we are locking when they are knocking. Remember, we had not even, you know, that time when was saying
Before
that
elections.
the schools closed, and then they were saying, you know, they are locking because it is political. They are trying to stifle people from campaigning, and we are saying no. And they were saying COVID is for those people in America where we said no. COVID is coming. This is a global village.
I'm going to come back. And the question I'll ask at the end is that what if we get the third wave? What
Yes,
will happen?
yes.
Just keep it on the back.
Yes.
John, let me get back to you. John, you have been at the center stage of advocating and supporting a number of small businesses, and we know what COVID has done to these small businesses, the various challenges and what needs to be done. And I wanted to share with us what you think must be done to support these businesses, and basically what has government done enough? What more needs to be done? Then I'll get Richard to chip in there.
Okay, so thank you very much, Ruth, and thank you, you Will, and the World Bank for organizing this and for focusing on women. I was raised by my mother, and she ran a small business, so I do what I do because I know it makes a difference. If she didn't, you know, when I wanted to go to a good secondary school, when my father was still alive, he said, no, it's too expensive. My mother, when I asked her, should I go to King's College, Budo? She says, of course you go. She had no clue how we were going to raise the money. She completely had no clue, you know. She just said, go for it. Eh? She didn't look at her bank account. She didn't look at how the business was doing. She said, just go for it.
Yeah.
So I basically do what I do with a passion because I know that women, particularly those that run small businesses, play a crucial role in developing our country. Now, when the first COVID-19 pandemic was announced, a lot of businesses were caught off guard. This is something that has never happened. Therefore, a lot of businesses have been affected in a number of ways, as you indicated. You've had low sales, supply chain disruption, some have closed, some have had to let go of staff, and so on. So in the initial stages, we requested government to come up with a very comprehensive tax relief kind of package. For instance, you had asked government to reduce the VAT rate, because when you reduce VAT, you allow some of that money to stay with businesses and stuff. We asked government to come up with a very generous fiscal package. In the event, it has taken long to come up with some of those measures. But government did a number of things, which I just want to highlight. One, government said it's going to expedite the payment of VAT refunds. Government said it's going to clear domestic arrears. All this was meant to ensure that money goes back to businesses. Government reduced the central bank rate by about 200 basis points to about 7% then. Now it has come to about 6.5%. And government put some money in the Uganda Development Bank. Obviously, you know this was a bit difficult for micro businesses to access. But government also put some money under the Myoga scheme in the Uganda Microfinance Support Center. Now, with the second lockdown, this would not be sufficient. There were already problems with this package. So we felt there's need for another special package. And that's why we pushed for the setting up of the Small Business Recovery Fund. It's 200 billion. 100 billion is from government. 100 billion is from the private sector. We've negotiated the conditions, and they are fairly friendly. They are not the best, because in any negotiation it's a give and take. But we are confident that a lot of, and we insisted, for instance, on issues of collateral, that people should be able to access the money even without physical collateral, through group guarantee schemes and things of that sort. So we are happy that this arrangement has been reached. Government has shown the goodwill. It has run out of fiscal space, as Richard said. You're saying that debt to GDP ratio is 48%. My suspicion is that it's around 52, moving somewhere at 53%. So they are clearly on the back foot, and we have to appreciate them for what they've done. It's not exhaustive, but it is something, and we are grateful.
John, I wanted to just, before I leave you and bring Richard, what can businesses do differently? What have you learned, and what are you going to do differently?
No,
before we leave you?
no, the Federation has been running a digitalization campaign for many years with UCC. We were doing it, but we were not convinced ourselves that it was the most important thing. Okay? But with COVID-19, it showed businesses that you either go digital or you perish. And now we are rolling out a digital loan for our members, and they're excited. Everyone wants to have a smartphone, which wasn't the case before. We talked about digital 2 years ago, so that wasn't extremely important. The other issue is businesses need to learn to diversify. A lot of, if you're too concentrated in one area, it exposes you. A lot of women entrepreneurs, and they were disproportionately affected by this pandemic. Why? Because they tend to work in certain low-level sectors, trade, tourism, and so on. So a lot of them were very negatively impacted because they are concentrated in these sectors, and these were sectors that were immediately affected by these lockdowns. So SMEs need to learn how to diversify. Yes, do this, but do the other as well in order to cushion yourself from such a scenario.
All
so
right.
for me, these are the two main lessons.
We don't have a lot of time left. Richard, I want to get to you, and Richard is a senior economist. And if people know the economists, they're like the land lawyers. You know the lawyers? I believe, these guys are I'm telling you, guys, economists, and it's a point I had to say, Richard. But anyway, I wanted to hear from you, based on the report that you've been able to share and the fact that you've been able to scan the Ugandan economy. What do you have to say on the monetary, trade, and fiscal policy? And make it easier for the people to understand the fiscal policy.
No, thanks, Ruth, and just thanks to everyone today for hosting us for the Uganda Women Entrepreneurials Association. Firstly, let me just say, I think my fellow panelists, I think, have touched on two of the key messages in the report. The one is certainly around a stronger vaccination program. And as we discussed in the report, we show how economies that have been more fully or better vaccinated, the population can open up quicker and there can be a stronger rebound. So just to really emphasize that point. Also in terms of prioritizing small businesses for job creation, that's another, say, key finding in our report, which I would like to emphasize. And I was also particularly glad to hear the chief guest earlier talk about digital technologies and digitalization. And I think there's a lot of potential and scope there for small businesses to support the new way of operating and doing things. And just before I come to your final point, your actual question, just to say another key message in our report was really around opening up schools in a safer way, ensuring that there's minimization of disease transmission, and then putting in place a strategy to try and monitor and if needs be, temporarily close down schools or certain areas, but certainly not another full closure of schools. And we're really heartened that the first big step in January is going to take place, and schools will be reopened. In terms of on your point about the fiscal and monetary, I discussed it a bit in the presentation. I think the main thing to flag is that the monetary response has certainly been ensure that there's credit, there's liquidity available to the private sector, and I think that should continue, and we would certainly support that. In terms of on the fiscal side, there are some challenges there, certainly. There are greater vulnerabilities now than before the COVID crisis. Debt has risen. The deficits have grown. Government space to spend and support the recovery and boost incomes is limited. But on the other hand, I think we've seen a strong commitment from government to go down this fiscal consolidation path, to try and improve their spending, to better balance or look at the composition of spending, to try and really support the recovery, support the most vulnerable, which we think is the right way to go. However, there is certainly going to be a need for government to mobilize revenues and resources. This continued reliance on debt really needs to be monitored more carefully, especially the types of debt that's now used going forward. So domestic revenues are important, and of course, that's a very hard message to give in the middle of a crisis when businesses are in a poor position. But I think there are measures and opportunities to improve revenue. There's a lot of exemptions that can be looked at. There's also the need to administer taxes and that better, to see how you can mobilize more.
Thank you very much, Richard. As we conclude this session, Dr. Twin, I want to get back to you on two things. My question on are we ready for the third wave in case it happens?
For sure, we are much better than how we were in the first wave and second wave. I do believe that this time we are more prepared. But you see, you can never say you are completely ready because it depends on the extent of the disease. If you get massive infection and severe disease, you'll definitely be overwhelmed. And so what we have done, we mainly looked at infrastructure, increase ICU bed capacity, oxygen availability, but still that would not be sufficient if really we got massive, because I've seen even in developed countries with really well-developed systems, they were overwhelmed. So the best message here is to make sure that we prevent, we talk about prevention and get vaccinated. But I don't anticipate that we are going to get severe disease, given that if we get really the majority get vaccinated, because that's what we have seen in other countries. The other day I was talking to a friend in the UK, and she told me that in one day they had registered about 64,000 cases in one day, but there were very, very few cases, severe cases that went to the hospital. And of course, those particular cases were, there was evidence that they were not vaccinated. So we believe that if we get really support from everyone, World Bank, and I want to thank World Bank because we are working with them to make sure that we increase the uptake and availability of the vaccines. If we work together and drum the message that economic recovery, like for example the entrepreneur, the small and medium enterprise, and everyone in the private sector, so that it ceases to be a problem of Ministry of Health.
Exactly. Some of the key issues you're speaking to, the people online can't hear because you're far from your microphone.
Sorry.
You just need to face
okay.
it.
So what I was saying, that the only way we can overcome this, and really we shouldn't be preoccupied by the third wave, is to make sure that we vaccinate. And we cannot do this alone as Ministry of Health. We need everyone. We need World Bank, we need civil society, we need private sector, we need everyone, so that it is not a problem of Ministry of Health, but it is a problem of economic survival. The economic survival of our country at the moment, and I was looking at this report, it's an amazing report. Thank you so much. And that post-COVID recovery, to change, to reverse that deep curve, we have to roll out vaccination quickly. And that's the only hope. Right. But I'm not worried about third wave because we are more prepared than last time.
Really? I think we are getting those that are watching.
Yes.
Please, but vaccinate.
But
that is
let them get vaccinated.
That's extremely very
yes.
important. Now, your parting shot is on how do you see the role of women in supporting and driving the recovery and revival of our economy?
I'm glad, actually, when I walked in, I found the minister talking about it, and I think she exhaustively talked about it, and even when he was giving an example of his mother, it just tells the whole role of a woman in not only economic recovery, but our survival.
Yeah.
From the time the woman conceives the baby, you are the one who carries the whole burden. While the other man is sleeping, is having a nice time, you carry the baby. You go through the pain.
Yeah.
You nurture this baby until the baby is an adult.
Yes.
That role, God, there is something that God gave us, we are women. First of all, we mind about details.
Yeah.
Secondly, we are more committed. I'm not saying I have no problem with men, guys. Don't take me wrong. Don't get me wrong. But we are more committed.
They are okay with it.
We are more committed to whatever we try to do. We multitask. We really multitask.
True.
I'm a mother. I am a wife. I am a permanent secretary. I'm a doctor. I'm a woman. All those things I must deal with. So because of that nature, that the woman that is, when we are given responsibilities, when we are given resources, even the little resources, we know how to use resources more than men. Believe me?
True.
Yes.
They will not like it.
Yes.
But it's okay.
So
this is our time as women.
Yes,
so let's say it.
When you empower a woman, just talk about a woman in the village who is just depending on going out, cultivate the land, plant and harvest and sell and takes care of the family. That lady will take care of their children. She will deal with the nutrition issue in the home. She will deal with an income in the home. She will deal even development in the home. Talk about medium income and these middle income enterprises. Still, when you empower a woman, you are actually empowering the whole nation.
True.
By supporting women and putting them in the middle of this economic recovery, first of all, we form the majority. Yeah? Is there anyone saying no? No. We are the majority. And now, when you look around, if you look at the land country, really, the government has empowered women.
Yeah, true.
In my ministry, all of us are women.
You know what? This is our time.
Yes.
I wanted to talk about it because our host, Mukami here, she's a lady, and the people behind everything are women. The chief guest was a lady.
Yes.
The prime minister is a what?
A lady.
And the vice president? And the moderator. So let's proceed.
So the issue really is not about, looking down on men, but also men play a big role. They balance us. I love men, but they balance us. But I know that to make us move faster and more meaningfully and more inclusive, women must be at the center of economic empowerment.
All right. Now, I wanted to go to John to just talk about, I always say that men are the best advocates for empowerment of women. And I can tell you, if more men are able to appreciate the power of giving a young girl a voice and the urge to lead and succeed, then the whole world will be changed. So, John, please, what role do you see that women have to play as we conclude this parting shot?
Men, the role that men
the
have
women. Maybe the men. What do you think so?
Yeah.
Why don't we change it to men?
Yeah.
You know, when you're the moderator, you are the...
You can change.
You can change. Let me change it. And then Richard will talk about the women. Don't worry.
No, I think the men need to be more supportive. We need to be more supportive of our wives. We need to be supportive of our daughters. We need to give them the room to thrive. And we shouldn't feel that by supporting women, we are losing space. We shouldn't be insecure. We should be happy to allow those around us to thrive and to do their best. And as a federation, we have set up a platform where we are supporting women and collaborating with entities like WIL. Of course, we are members of the Private Sector Foundation and so on. We want to see that women have greater prominence in our activities. And we try to address the constraints that they have faced. Issues of access to finance, they are still here. We need to address them. Issues of skills. We need to ensure that women transition from running micro businesses, and the report says so, to start running small and medium-sized enterprises, growth-oriented enterprises. This is a joint task, and I think the men have a very, very important role to play in this.
John, thank you. We are just concluding this. Richard, how can we support the women?
Yeah, I think three things come to mind. I think firstly, women could certainly be vaccination champions.
Yeah.
Let's call it that, which is critical right now. Given, as Piers said, the nurturing and the caring side to women, just to understand this is a critical health issue right now. I think women can be given the right opportunities. They can become really powerful and central business leaders and entrepreneurs in Uganda. And I think finally, I think women are going to be critical to the revival of the education sector in terms of supporting families, households, children getting back into school and encouraging again that learning and that growth.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, and all of you that are watching us, we've come to the conclusion of this very interesting discussion. We are going to get back, but now I want to get back to Josephine to just tell us what next. I'll be back.
Joining us online. So there are two questions. One is for Mr. Walugembe and the other one is for Rich. And the first question, well, some comments. Crispin Kaheru says, good analytical insights from Richard. Hope his presentation is thoroughly discussed, and I think that has been achieved. But then a question for Mr. Walugembe. Very good insights by the panelists. Please highlight the failures of the booster packs for SMEs. And then a question for you, Rich, following both, actually for both Richard and Dr. Diana. Following both Richard and Dr. Diana's interventions, I'm compelled to believe that building stronger vaccination programs is a way out. Can we support special COVID-19 vaccine uptake campaigns? And this in particular was to the World Bank.
Yes. Let's start with John.
Okay, thank you. So in terms of, I think government, in my opinion, in certain respects, has not gone far enough. Let's look at the tax relief measures. They simply gave tax deferrals. Instead of paying in June, please pay your pay as you earn and your corporation tax in September. The burden still remains. There's no tax relief there. So what we wanted was concrete and sound tax relief. Now we understand that because of the revenue collection challenges, government does not want to experience any leakages. But at some point, you have to say, if my patient, if I'm demanding someone money, and they say he's admitted, I have to do everything possible to ensure that he gets back on his feet so that he repays me. You see? So government should work to ensure that SMEs get back on their feet. And I think in the issues of tax relief, there was a bit of a shortfall. When the first 455 billion was sent to UDB, the conditionalities there were also so high. Minimum amount then was 100 million, a lot of requirements. We've had discussions and they've been able to change. And I think you will, my colleagues were telling me, you've also reached a deal with UDB on supporting women entrepreneurs. So there were some mistakes that were made initially, but those have to a large extent been rectified. If you look at the Small Business Recovery Fund, for instance, the maximum loan amount is 100 million. You can borrow any amount you want. You can use any form of collateral. Interest is 10%, moreover, on the government portion only. So we've tried to rectify some of those things. I'm not saying it's perfect, but it's a good try. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's go to Dr. Swine and then Richard. Is there anything you want to respond from the social media comments?
I think World Bank, we've been working with World Bank, and I think Richard will say something. Right now we are preparing an application. They want to support. They are going to support us with the vaccines, additional vaccines, but also to support the rollout. But also we have seen really the goodwill from the private sector. They have been supporting us, but what we want is to see how we can scale up that support to make sure that we go even outside Kampala and make sure that this campaign, this private sector-led campaign, also goes to the other regions. They are also going to support the actual rollout, although sometimes, you know, their process quite takes some time. So we are still waiting, but we know that the World Bank has been at the forefront of supporting us. Over to you, Richard.
Sure, yeah, I mean, I think just to add, we are preparing quite a substantial program to support the vaccination purchase as well as rollout. And just to say, it's certainly something we're taking seriously and we're expediting internally. And these funds will be available this year, in the next few months, to support this. I think also the other way that, and we will certainly look to other areas to try and maintain and sustain that support. But I think in other areas we're trying to boost this campaign is certainly in any platform we have, in any event we have, including this one, is really just to try and emphasize the importance of getting vaccinated and what it means for immediate recovery and then longer term growth in Uganda.
All right, what an interesting session. we've now come to the end of this session, and I want to thank you we need to applaud these people. Those that are out there watching, please let's just applaud this team for the presenters that we had this morning. Thank you very much. And we are going to go on with the discussion. We are going to go into a presentation on putting women at the center of Uganda's economic revival. And it's going on now, and after that we would have another interesting session. Please, we'll be back.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Solitara. I'm a senior social development specialist in the gender group of the World Bank Group. And I'm a co-author of the 18th edition of the Uganda Economic Update. I'm going to be giving a presentation on part 2 of the update, which is about improving women's economic empowerment. This means closing gaps between men and women in economic outcomes and decision-making. Bringing women more into the center of the productive economy will bring a stronger and faster economic revival. Even before the COVID-19 pandemic shock, Uganda already had lost an estimated $61 billion due to gender inequality. Gains that women had made in labor force participation rates a decade ago, which were among the highest rates in the region, have been erased. Bringing women's earnings to match men's would increase national wealth by almost 12%. Not investing in women deprives households and the economy of the contributions women would make and constrains its transition out of agriculture. Following the first lockdown in March of 2020, more women than men had to stop working, especially young women, and most of all, urban women, 37% of whom reported a work stoppage. Gender inequality in workforce participation, which had been increasing since 2013, thus became even worse in 2020. Not only have more women than men been pushed back into agricultural production, more women than men have had to backslide into poverty level or subsistence agriculture and further away from wage employment. Women are now about 50% more likely than men to want employment but not be able to look for jobs or obtain them. Young women encounter more hurdles than young men in completing their educations and successfully transitioning from school to work, especially to wage employment. Girls are generally more likely than boys to not attend school or to drop out of school because of pregnancy or family pressures to stay home and perform unpaid care work. When some schools reopened in 2021, 17% of girls did not return, compared to only 11% of boys. The biggest difference in boys and girls' reasons for not returning was teen pregnancy, which kept more than 1/4 of these non-returning girls out of schools that did reopen. When girls do stay in school, they're far less likely than boys to acquire the skills that get them jobs that pay well and are sustainable, such as in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, or STEM fields. Male students far outnumber female students in the TVET institutes that train for higher skill and higher paying jobs. Another gender gap in economic outcomes is in ownership of family assets, especially land. In Uganda, women are much less likely than men to own land, both in formal and informal or customary land ownership. The parcels of land they do own tend to be smaller than those men own. This is one reason why female farmers are not as productive as male farmers. When women own the land they farm, they tend to be just as productive as men. Closing the gender gap in agricultural productivity could increase GDP by 0.42%, which could raise 119,000 people out of poverty. One reason why women own less land is that Ugandan law does not guarantee their equal rights to inherit family property, and they inherit less land. Current efforts to amend the succession law are underway, fortunately. If and when female surviving spouses and children are guaranteed the same inheritance rights as male surviving spouses and children, everyone will need to be educated about these rights because very few people are aware that gender equal inheritance rights can be protected. Women's lack of owned land also means that they don't have the main traditional form of collateral that is required to secure loans from banks and other formal financial institutions. Most of these institutions do not have alternative means of assessing and approving women's creditworthiness. Women's lower use of formal financial services is the main way in which they remain financially excluded in Uganda. They are more likely than men to rely instead on informal financial services. The good news is that women have doubled their rates of borrowing from formal banks since 2016, from 5 to 11%. This still lags behind men's share, 20% borrowing from banks. Gender gaps in credit from formal financial institutions, which tend to give larger loans than informal institutions, is a key determinant of gender gaps in entrepreneurship. It's not that women aren't as eager and capable as men of being successful entrepreneurs. In fact, they're highly entrepreneurial, and Uganda is one of the few countries in the world to have achieved gender parity in entrepreneurial activity. But because of specific constraints on their growth-oriented entrepreneurship, women business owners cluster in informal micro-enterprises in lower profit sectors. Among all small and medium-sized formal businesses, less than 30% are owned by women. Gender gaps among young entrepreneurs have grown under the pandemic. More young women had to close their businesses compared to older women and men of all ages. Even before the pandemic, women's enterprises averaged 30% lower profits than men. This profit gap is related to women entrepreneurs' tendency to cluster in lower profit sectors and, as we've seen, access smaller loans, which is largely because there's no law that prohibits lenders from discriminating against women. Women also lack the access to technology, market information, and business networks that male entrepreneurs tend to enjoy. Research shows that by closing gender gaps in these areas, women entrepreneurs can be just as productive and profitable as male entrepreneurs, especially when they cross over into male-dominated sectors, such as automobile maintenance and sales, construction, electricity and gas supply, metalworks and engineering, and transportation. When Uganda can meet the aspirations of growth-oriented women entrepreneurs, activity and profits that result will increase household incomes and push the economy ahead into a faster and stronger recovery. Thanks, and over to you, Margarita.
Thank you, Jen. My name is Margarita Puerto. I'm a senior social development specialist working on gender inclusion in the Ugandan country office. I'd like to summarize key messages from the report that we would like also to bring to the table to enable this discussion and support for women economic empowerment in Uganda. One of the key findings, but also important message that we want to convey today is about keeping girls in the school, because that will also enable a more smooth transition from the school to jobs and access to the more profitable sectors for women. That transformation, the support to a more industrialized economy will also depend on women participating more actively in these sectors and having opportunities for skill development and opportunities for education for girls is the first step. Secondly, we want also to make a strong argument for investing in interventions that ease women's unpaid care work responsibilities and create more time for their wage employment or entrepreneurship. This is something we have seen everywhere else in the world. The importance and the cost also of the domestic work in terms of participation in the labor market. Helping women to ease this burden or ease this responsibility is an important aspect also to enhance their economic participation. Another important angle is related to land rights. Land is an important aspect for access to credit, but it's also an important aspect for women participating in the agriculture sector and agribusiness. So addressing this in a more comprehensive way and making sure that there are reforms that are supporting women, that are enhancing their participation and their access to land is an important aspect that the report is also showing with a lot of evidence and clarity. An important element that has been discussed and that also we found out from the study is on financial literacy among women and increase their access to formal financial services. We see women participation in a lot of informal mechanisms and low structures, like low cost credits for women at the community level, but it's important also that these women have access to large amounts of credit and that they can also make a transition from a small to medium businesses. Women demand for more credit and also growth-oriented enterprises needs to be supported by enhancing the legal environment that reduce the discrimination for women in access to credit and also promoting more alternative mechanisms to establish women creditworthiness. These aspects about the barriers that women have in participating in economy are key recommendations that we look forward to keep supporting and working close with the Ugandan government to make sure a better and stronger participation of women in the recovery of their economy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jennifer Solatorov and Margarita, for the presentation. Now, those of you that are watching, I think you've been able to see the issues concerning putting women, what we need to do to put women at the center of the economic recovery. Now, what is going on next is a very interesting panel to discuss how we are able to achieve this. And in order to do that physically, I want to introduce our panelists. I am going to start with Dr. Goodla Basaz. Some of you that know Goody Leisure Farm, Dr. Goodla has just been recognized as one of the top women entrepreneurs making change in Africa. She just got that award recently. And I know, Dr. Goodla, we celebrate you for the work you're doing in changing lives of women and young people as well. I want to also call upon Commissioner Angela Nakafero. Commissioner Angela is one of those foot soldiers that have actually been working hard. The women we have in this country that have been working hard even during COVID to make sure that the issues concerning women, children, and empowerment of women are quickly addressed. And I can tell you she has not taken leave for a long time. So Commissioner Angela, it's good to see you. We have from Uganda Women Entrepreneurs, the CEO, Connie. Connie, please, I told Connie, your second name for me, Kechihembo. Connie, yes. Yes, Connie, please come in here, and we are glad to have been hosted by Uganda Women Entrepreneurs here Association. And I want to tell you, UL is doing a lot of work in advocating for the empowerment of women because they believe empower a woman, empower a nation. And we are glad. They have been here for a long, long time pushing issues for women. Connie, thank you. And lastly, Fatma. Fatma has a very brief, short, but complicated name. I don't know if somebody can easily pronounce it. And it is Nakwivi. I don't know how to say it if you're just watching. I'm going to read it for you, and then you tell me how to pronounce it. N-A-Q-V-I. How do you pronounce it? Eh? It is simple, brief, complicated. Fatma is a social development specialist at the World Bank, and she's been so much behind looking at interventions to support empowerment of women. Ladies and gentlemen, also online, we have Margarita. Can I see Margarita? Margarita, say hello. Let's see Margarita here. Margarita, where are you? In the same shirt and dress? Let's see Margarita. Margarita, where are you? Please, if I say that, don't refuse to get online. Margarita. Where are you, Margarita? Yes. And that's Jennifer. Oh, Dr. Pear. No. That's Dr. Pear. Margarita, as we get to you, let's get to Dr. Atim Apea. How are you, Dr. Tim? Honorable. Honorable, I can't hear you. I can't hear you, Honorable. You know, things change. We used to be colleagues, now she's a Honorable. Just in a blink of, you know, this world can change. Guys, Honorable, I used to say
Yes,
doctor,
I'm
now
right
it is
here.
Honorable Doctor Atim Apea. Are you there? Can you hear me? Yes, yes, doctor. Are you here? I
Yes,
want to
I'm
hear
here.
you.
Yes, please.
Yes, you look
Hi,
lovely.
everyone. Yes.
Are you in Gulu? Where are you? Where are you, Honorable?
I am in Lira right
You
now.
are in Lira.
I'm in Lira.
Good to see you. At least we can hear you, and I will
Yes.
come back to you. But I'm glad you're there. Yes, Margarita, I don't see
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Margarita and Jennifer, I don't see. I don't know where you are. If you're there, I would. Margarita, I know you don't want us to see the face, but I'll get back. Just tell me you're there. Say hello, Margarita. Margarita and Jennifer.
Yeah.
This is Jennifer Salatara. Thank you so much. It's great to see everyone at the panel, and thanks everybody who's joining in person and online. Wonderful to be a part of this panel. Thank you.
Thank you. Lastly, Margarita, if Margarita is not, I believe she's trying to make sure that the picture in the video is the same as she is, so she's preparing. Margarita, have you prepared? Or if you're not, I can...
It's a good word.
I can proceed a bit as you match it up, don't worry. I can go to the pan I have here this morning. So ladies and gentlemen that are watching us, we have a very interesting discussion about women. And I think all of us have talked about what women mean to transforming an economy. And we all agree that we are the largest percentage. And we all agree that these men need us. We need to work together to make it happen. And I think this discussion for me is extremely very, very important because I have a mixture here of experiences of women that are working in different responsibilities, in different portfolios, and I think there is a lot to learn. I want to start with Dr. Gudra. Dr. Gudra, we are looking at putting women at the center of Uganda's economic revival. And there is a key issue on the top 3 investment. If you are supposed to tell government, development partners, and anybody where we need support, what are the top 3 investments that need to be made right now to ensure women's economic empowerment is central to Uganda's economic recovery?
Thank you very much. It's an honor for me to be here. I left Gulu today morning. I was in field work, but I'm glad I made it.
Thank you. Thank you.
I am Professor Gudla Naiga Basaza. I'm the first doctor of ICT in this country. So when I think about the most important investment right now, to me it is for the women being able to...
Before you say something, Dr. Gudra, your husband is Professor Basaza. And you know, when I go to see them, I would say, please, doctor and prof. You get it? Now I have a challenge. I can't say prof and prof. So I don't know how we will manage that, but you talk about it as well. How do women manage that transition? It's very important. You talk about it. Tell me, proceed.
Okay. To me, I think the most important investment right now is to ensure that we reduce the cost of engaging in a digital economy. When we think about COVID-19 and any other challenges that are likely to come, there is a way they prevent us from meeting the client face to face. So when you find that probably a number of women, even those with, say, phones, with access to internet, are not actually engaging in e-commerce, that's a big disadvantage. It takes us out of an opportunity to meet a large market. And this does not apply only to women in a certain class, even if you are in agriculture. During COVID-19, I'll give you our own example. We are farmers. We are into white meat. Just by being able to work in the digital space, we were able to meet our market. We were able to supply and get a bigger profit margin than we used to get going through the middleman. So to me, that investment is very important. The second issue is about financial literacy. In whatever we do, we need to be able to know the cost-benefit analysis, the break-even point, because women are into business, but at times the business is so small that it will never give you any profit. Are we putting mathematics into the business? What is the minimum I should do for me to be able to earn? Then we are working so hard, but we are at the lowest level of the almost every value chain. We need to do what we call value chain analysis. Even if I'm continuing with my farming, where do I make the most money given my circumstances? Farming might be looked at as something for the poor or whatever, but depending on where you are in the value chain of farming. Thank you. Asked for 3 things? Yes. Yeah.
That's a very, very interesting, Dr. Gudra. It will be very interesting to hear from somebody else. You talked about ICT, financial literacy, and I think it will be good on a government's perspective, Angela. Is there anything you want to talk about that?
Thank you very much.
Before I bring in Dr. Appiah, please get ready after Angela, and then I get to Dr. Appiah.
Thank you very much, Ruth. First of all, I would like to thank the World Bank for this particular Uganda economic update and focusing it on women's economic empowerment, which is a critical question for us as the social development sector in Uganda is very, very important. Thank you very much. I also need to celebrate the resilience of women. We are in COVID, but we've managed to maintain our families. Our children are feeding. Put aside the issues of gender-based violence, but we've managed our families in these critical and most challenging times of our lives. Back to your question, Ruth. Doctor has outlined quite important issues, but I would also like to say that women need to have access to affordable and accessible finance. Low interest, flexible, that will enable them to invest into their businesses. We've lost a lot. We've spent a lot. We don't have the finances to put back into our enterprises. It's to be very critical to have access to affordable and accessible finance for enterprise development. I'm already aware that government is trying, but the demand is so huge. We need much more beyond what government is providing. Then secondly, I would also like to emphasize the aspect of skilling. Majority of the women, we've seen the findings of the report, majority of the women in business don't have the skills required to compete in the market. It's very, very volatile. It's very challenging. We need the skills to be able to manage. We need common user facilities where I can move in and be able to assess the kind of services that Dr. Gudra is emphasizing. The kind of services that will make my productivity higher, will also help me in terms of saving time for productive work. All of us know that women spend a lot in terms of looking after the children, looking after the family, doing those unproductive chores of our lives. So we need spaces that can provide some of the services that can bring us together in terms of innovating, but can also inspire us to think beyond small-scale or micro-scale enterprises to big and large-scale enterprises. Why not? Why don't we break through? Thank you.
Dr. Atim, I wanted you to say something, and then I'll get to Fatma, because some of this is good to hear what is in the plan or pipeline for the bank. What are you doing to address, to support some of these areas identified? Honorable Dr. Atim.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, back to you on the top 3, what top 3 investments that need to be done right now to support women economic empowerment, to ensure it's at the center in reviving Uganda's economy. You've heard what members have said. Is there anything extra that you think must be done?
Thank you very much, and thank you for the very good work and research that World Bank has done. I would like to look at this in two perspectives. One, in the rural women perspective, but also in the legislation perspective, where I sit now as the Vice Chair of Agriculture. One is that I appreciate the contributions of my colleague. But when we talk about digitalization of the economy, we need to think about the rural woman. Who owns the phone and who controls it? And what kind of phone or digital economy are we talking about? So for me, just to chip in on that part that Dr. Goodler submitted, is that as government and also development partners and private sector, we've got to make sure, ensure that we customize whatever digital economy that we are talking about. Because I've always had challenges that when we talk about digitizing business, e-commerce, we assume all these women are at the same level. That is one. Now, the other aspect for me, the investment that I would want to see, both in terms of development partners and government, and what I'm actually trying to push on at the Agriculture Committee of Parliament, is that we need to repeal the law of the public-private partnership. That law seems to only recognize the infrastructure, the big businesses. But we have women, for example, in northern Uganda, who are coming together to put the little land that they don't actually own, but to start looking at how do we increase the production. Now, we've talked quite a lot as the feminists and the gender fraternity about the land rights. I think it's a high time we start moving towards talking about partnership. Can we start empowering or training our traditional systems to appreciate partnering with women, not as the disadvantaged and the beneficiaries, but as participants of economic recovery of our country? And I think for me, one of the areas is that land that we have been saying we are disadvantaged. Let us start looking for partnership as wives and as members of that clan, and go to government and development partners for partnership to start looking at that. The other aspect is, of course, financing, access to financing, which my colleague has talked about. And as a country, and I think the minister talked about it, there is quite some move towards that direction. But I always get disappointed that when we talk about women, we look at small things. Can we start advocating for things like gender bond, which has worked in other countries? Are there deliberate effort other than saying, oh, out of the Paris development model, we have to give women 30%? I've always said and said again that we are more than 50% of this population, and we need to start talking about gender parity. We've talked so much as beggars. We are in charge. We are more than 50%. We are mothers of these children. And, so I think for me, for us to be at the center of the economy, we want to see a big move towards investment in big businesses of women. We want to see the implementation of laws that is supposed to give 30% of contracts, road constructions, big things in Ministry of Health. I see Dr. Diana there. Can we see data of how many women businesses government is engaging in? The other aspect that is very critical for this recovery is what we talk about domestic areas. Can somebody help us do a research to tell us, in the lots of money that the businesses are asking government to pay, what is the percentage of women businesses there? Can we start asking government to pay the domestic areas so that women get back on business in their businesses and lead from the front, and start looking at how government can also invest on productivity? Remember, majority of us, like for us in rice, majority of us are in the production level. Our productivity is very low. Where are the new technologies? Where is the intensive agriculture? Where are they investing? Can we start seeing investment in those areas where women businesses can actually start being more productive and also more profitable. I thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Those are very interesting. There's a lot to pick there, I think. And I think those that are watching, you see the issues that are being raised. And I hope that we can be able to use them as the private sector, as government and the development partners, and importantly, our host, the World Bank, in addressing a number of interventions as well. Fatima, you've heard all these things that people have, the panelists have prioritized. What is happening with the bank? What's your perspective? What are you doing about it?
Yeah, sure, Ruth. Thank you so much for your question. So I think like all the other panelists have highlighted, and also which came out in our report, there are a couple of very key important factors that we need to focus on. One is, you saw in one of the slides, and Dr. Ateem and others also talked about it, that women are very entrepreneurial in Uganda, but they're just clustered around being at the end of micro enterprises. So why in a majority of them, if we look at women managed or women owned enterprises, nearly 80% of them are clustered around or they're micro enterprises. So what are the barriers that don't allow them to move to small enterprises or even medium enterprises? So I think, as you heard from all the panelists there, and even which you saw in our report, is that there are multiple barriers that these women face. So what we cannot do is have a siloed approach. So if I can just actually recap what all the different panelists talked about, which are constraints and barriers for these women to enhance their entrepreneurial activities and move to the higher end, is I think we can put them in 4 buckets. Like Angela talked about and other panelists also, it's having affordable access to finance. And as Jennifer highlighted in our presentation, which the report highlights, women actually don't have ready access to finance. One, it's usually small amounts. And then, of course, there are a lot of requirements for women to access this finance. There's the issue of collateral, and usually it's land which they're not able to access. So we really need to enhance the access to a finance environment for women. And then the other very important aspect is enterprise development. Like Dr. Gudula also talked about, from getting digital skills, having value chain analysis. So what is coming across is that women usually don't have a lot of this information. They don't have access to these skills. So again, we need to use a very integrated approach of enterprise development where women are getting core business development skills. So it starts from the back end. What we were even talking about earlier, in the earlier part of the discussion, that we really need to ensure women finish school, they have an enabling environment where they're getting basic education, which allows them to really be able to enter the market and be able to have these skills. So having core business skills, and then once you do the value chain analysis, they really should move into these growth sectors which are male dominated. So the report also highlights one very interesting aspect is that when women enter, this entry barrier, or they break this entry barrier of male dominated sectors, they're actually very, very successful. And a lot of times there's information asymmetry. They don't know what are the opportunities in these sectors. And the other thing is business networks. So you see on this panel these very inspiring women who really, what we propose is they should come together, there should be a business network. They're role models for a lot of these young entrepreneurs that this is possible. And then just to conclude, a couple of other key points, again, other panelists talk about which COVID has brought to the forefront is the childcare economy. So women really carry this additional burden of working, and even Dr. Diana was talking about as the PS, they're multitasking. So we really need to invest in the childcare economy. So while women are moving ahead in the labor force and also enhancing their entrepreneurial activities, they have that support of childcare, which at times is, a major barrier. And then the last one is, of course, the broader policy environment. I'm sure Angela and others will talk about that women also face constraints of gender-based violence when they're moving ahead. So there are a lot of socio-psychological things that they have to contend with. So that is also an investment which is really needed in the broader policy environment. So just to wrap up, I mean, we're working very closely with the Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development on, working on such interventions which use an integrated and holistic approach and are not done in silos. And that's when we can really address these constraints and challenges.
Thank you very much, Fatma Nakwivi. That name. Let me get to Connie. Connie, I really want to ask you something because we want to support women to get into sectors that are normally high-paying, quality, and sometimes they are dominated by men, actually. And we need to see what needs to be done to achieve that. And then, Dr. Gudra, I wanted you to add on this based on your experience as well.
Thank you so much, Madam Moderator. And I must really appreciate the World Bank report because as an activist for women entrepreneurs in this country, we always need information that helps us to engage. Recently, we decided to take it on seriously and see that whatever government is committing, our women are actually accessing as well. So the recent outcome of the financial stimuli for the women entrepreneurs is one of the key solutions to move the women to the next stage. And we are privileged that we are partnering with the World Uganda Development Bank. But what have we learned in this shortest time? Mr. Ogembe talked about it earlier, that we went in full blast and negotiated for all the things that we needed. And actually, as you will, we went ahead to tell them that the women do not even have bank accounts. And they agreed that we can present mobile phone statements if you're transacting, show proof that you are transacting with your phone. You don't need a smart card, but if you have your small phone and you've been selling your Irish every day, you have proof. So moving our entrepreneurs to the next level, what we need is to show proof that they're actually engaged in business. One of the things that you will have to do to address this issue to move the ladies to the next level is to ensure that we are there. We have grown now, we are 2.8 million entrepreneurs under our membership. So we needed to show evidence that we are there and we have the need, which we have done. We have gone ahead to negotiate and that has been granted. So the issue, Ruth, now is that our women, for them to be competitive, they need the right skills. You can't, even if they tell you come for 100 million and start this road. So we need to work together with the men. We need to partner. Partnership development is really timely at this time because we realize that much as the space being created for us, we can't work alone. And we need those skills internally for SMEs to be able to get to the next level. The other second issue, I must say that legislation is very important. We have been negotiating for public procurement for women participation. And recently the President consented to the Public Procurement Act. So now there is a lot of provisions that allow women to compete even on the bigger jobs, which the men are doing. But again, what you will have to do and the other partners around us is to prepare the women. So we may discuss these priorities that we need to see women enjoy, but there must be a critical investment in skilling them.
And actually, I want to say, to upload the bank, we have worked with the World Bank in skilling Ugandans through SDF. And I want to say we have supported 100,000 beneficiaries directly. And 48% of them were women. And I want to say that demand is high. When we received applications, our country manager, we have only managed to give 10% of the total applicants that we received. And I think that tells us the need to integrate skilling in a number of the interventions that we have, but also the need to engage government to have a sustainable skills development fund. That's extremely, very, very important. And I want to applaud you for that. Being in 99 districts is not a small thing. And it's a key achievement.
And you will, of course, is now in 73 districts.
Good.
So it's not a small thing as well.
Yes, Connie.
What are we trying to do with the women to get the next stage? we are also trying to emphasize the aspect of going into business for export. For instance, our women were like Dr. Gudra said, at the lowest of the pyramid when it comes to, say, livestock. We are now orienting them to go into beef value chain, where you can package and export. So the element of value addition becomes very critical. As we discuss, if you see all the issues that are coming up from the report, there is some value we need to add to get to the men where they are, not just to stay where we have been, to move out from that level. But the other aspect that is very critical, and now UWIL is focusing on it as well, is the business development service component. Whereas there is a platform for us to get access to credit, it is there now. The government is trying to, to create opportunities and other development partners. But the aspect of financial literacy, people not knowing what to do with the money, there's no books of accounts, becomes very challenging, and we have to go backwards, Ruth, to the training of how to keep your books so that you can access the money. Even when they have very good project ideas, you realize that there is a critical gap. So we are moving towards getting into bigger opportunities, bigger engagement, bigger businesses. The government is trying to create that ambience for us, but we need to invest highly in mindset change, because we still have the phobia. Even when Dr. Goodway is talking about ICT, I have a problem with my phone. It takes me time to navigate, get what I want, even when I'm exposed woman. So what about my grandmother and my little sister who is in the village, and she's actually doing very critical business, and she has to use ICT to embrace e-commerce and other things.
Yeah, that's interesting, Dr. Goodway. And I want to say, under SDF, the World Bank intervention, we actually got ladies to go into truck driving, and they are now ready for oil and gas. It wasn't easy, because the first lot of 200, our achievement was like, okay, we had about, I think, 15%, which is good enough. And then we had to encourage women to go into scaffolding, going up the mast, the mast, the telecom mast up, and then also the one for, transmission, and it wasn't for me when I get 10%, 15%, but it's not easy. More work needs to be done. But I can tell you, those ladies, next time we'll have them as role models. The salaries are higher, doubled, and I think it's good for people to know that we need to go into there. They have money, they have made it. Dr. Gudra, let us be practical. Which sectors do you see women going into?
Okay, you have changed the question. I wanted to answer what she was talking about.
Okay, add on that.
That's okay. One. That's all right.
Do both. Don't worry. Do both.
No problem. But regardless of what sector the women are going to be engaged in, we need to be concerned about addressing the challenges that prevent the women to perform at their best. The challenges have been mentioned. If we talk about the care economy, woman is taking care of the child, the sick, the elderly, everybody. Let's do a business around that. Let us have daycare centers. We run a daycare center. At our farm, we employ 275 people. 70% of our staff are women. We run a daycare center. It gives every woman an opportunity to have their child comfortable, and they are able to do their work. We have an incubation center.
For me, what you're talking about is extremely very important. There's so many people watching us, and some of them have businesses. That is a key point as a tech, that if you have a business now and you're employing women, we can pick a leaf from Dr. Gudra. Even the parliament is doing it to make a woman perform better. Put there those, women are distracted. If your child is sick, she's still, 7 months, our leave is 6 months, and then 7 months, 8 months, you have to keep on calling. Put for me a breastfeeding facility. I would focus. And for me, I think through this particular session, we need an action immediately, that if you're listening in, please, you're watching in, let's act on that immediately, because it's simple to do. Even a smaller business can actually do that. You put a point, and then it is easier for people to at least, breastfeed their kids, put there somebody to make kids play, as you know, as parents can come on break sessions to talk to them. Dr. Gudra,
and
let's
it's
proceed.
actually a business opportunity on its own, but which provides the women, more women, an opportunity to do their work effectively.
I do agree.
The other obstacle that I see in my area where I operate, the kind of jobs that women do require a lot of energy, require a lot of time, require a lot of space, require a lot of resources, and in the end, we get so little out of this. So what is our solution here? Technologies are there. What is the purpose of a woman spending a whole month digging an acre when there is a power hoe, for example? And it doesn't mean that when I buy a power hoe, I will not be able to make the profit. The issue is that I may not have the money for the power hoe right now, but by the end of the year, I've actually spent the money of the power hoe. So availing technologies at a price that I can pay later to reduce the burden that is required of me.
Fatima, comes to access to credit. Margarita, I'll get back to you and Jennifer later. You'll be able to come in later. Yes, Dr. Gudra.
Yeah, so Fatima talked about networking. We've been involved in networking as women. We like it, we meet, we talk about what is happening, but this networking this time should be geared towards creating lasting, impactful partnerships. When we go to the market, we are not able to access the market because of the quantities. Why don't we partner and bulk? Have the same standard, sell to a bigger market, have a bigger bargain. Why don't we are talking about collateral as a big issue? But when I think about collateral, okay, we are asking for inheritance, that's all right, but most people who have collateral have worked for it. Why are the women not having collateral? It's not that the women are not working, but there is a way we have been stereotyped into our investment is in perishable, flashable. When I get money, I'll buy food. When I get money, I'll buy soap, I'll buy toilet paper. My friend will be buying land, will be buying chattels. Now you can use your chairs, you can use everything. So it's not that we are not working, but we are not investing in collateral. Now, during these networks, when we come together as women entrepreneurs, why don't we buy land together? And we can use this land to get financing to support us. So I want us to think about networks for building our capacity to engage bigger and engage more. I talked about ICT, and it sounded like something in the air, but it's not in the air. I work in 750 villages in this country. Each of these villages, by the support of MasterCard Foundation, we've been able to ensure that each village has a tablet, has a projector. We can connect at a click. What has this done for us? We are able to trade as one. Right now, we are supplying 100 tons of white meat every day. It's possible because we can connect at once, we can synchronize, and we can say today it is this particular village to supply. Tomorrow it's this particular village. Because there is a common user facility. All our youth, who are actually 70% women, 30% refugees, they are connecting at one facility. So all of us will not be having the smart gadgets, whatever it is, but a common user facility. And what is interesting, it's becoming a business opportunity for the youth. Anybody can go to the youth at a fee, so they are and everything. So I would want us to see women in the information economy. When we say there is lack of information, that is a business opportunity. If you can avail that information, then you will be paid for that information.
Dr. Gudra, as you end, I know that through World Bank support under SDF, you've also been able to provide an opportunity to a number of young women and men to do apprenticeship and internship, and at least sometime the young people need an opportunity to be able to get that work-based learning exposure. Can you talk about it?
Yeah,
as you end your...
Thank you for giving me an opportunity to thank the World Bank and SDF for building my capacity first. When the first time I applied to host interns, I had the will, I had the interest, I had no capacity. I remember I was told, you cannot host this number. Your place is so small. Where will they sleep? But I appreciated that feedback. I started working very hard. I could only host 20. But today I'm happy that at our incubation center we can host 500 youth for incubation, and each one of them will be having a practical business they are engaging in. In our lives, we need people who challenge us to go to the next level. Who is challenging that woman to go to the next level? Who is showing her the next level she should aspire to be? Now, talking about the possibility of doing internship for the young people, we decided we are going to expose the young people to opportunities around the value chain. This time we had incubation around horticulture and fish. And we said, for you to finish your apprenticeship, you must have a minimum viable product. We have seen young people produce products like essential oils, and others use these essential oils to make soaps, to make essence, to make different products. So instead of all of us crowding at the production level, we have an opportunity to have different products from the same plant, from the same animal. So I take this opportunity to thank World Bank for believing in me. I was very small, but today I feel so proud. I know that in my area, I'm the biggest taxpayer, where I come from, and I'm a farmer. I'm a farmer. Yeah.
I want to go to Angela. By the way, Hope, Dr. Atim, under Hope Development Foundation.
I'm about to run.
Yes, Honorable, she also got support under SDF. She will tell you what she did through the World Bank. It's so interesting. She will tell you. I think people need to understand some of the interventions that the World Bank is working on with the government of Uganda to change the lives of women. You will talk about it, but let me just get to Commissioner Angela, and then I'll get back to you, and then Margarita, and then Jennifer. So, Commissioner Jennifer, don't worry if I call you doctor. You can get it. Go for it. So, Commissioner Jennifer, I wanted to just this discussion, being in the Ministry of Gender, what advice would you give to young Angela? What advice would you give to young Ugandan women today? What would you suggest they study, or maybe how could they avoid pressure to drop out of school? And maybe what jobs would you advise them to pursue? It's quite interesting, and I think maybe I would still get comments from the rest of the members.
Thank you very much, Ruth. What we study is very critical in determining where we go and how we end. So for me, it's very important, and before I left the Ministry of Education and Sports, we're championing girls in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And I love the project, because as women, we need to break through some of these male-dominated fields that are really paying highly, and the opportunities are there. If I had the time, I would share my experience of my daughter. She did pharmacy, but before she completed, 3 jobs were waiting for her. So we need to break through into science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And it has to start from primary 1. When we inspire our girls, as parents, we need to inspire our daughters and sons to go into science, technology, and mathematics. And of course, even the education sector has to invest in these areas. Most of the girls are interested, but along the way there are challenges. So if we get the education sector investing in girls' education in science, technology, and mathematics, we'll be able to break through some of the male-dominated fields where women are not. Secondly, as we negotiate through the COVID context, our children, both boys and girls, are being traumatized. I've gone through very challenging circumstances. I'm glad that the Ministry of Education and Sports is giving us an opportunity for second chance education. I would like to call upon the young girls out there who are already mothers or expecting. Please, this is not the end of the education career. Please come back, go back to school, and convince yourself to stay in school. It's very, very important. I'm also appealing to the parents, but even the schools have to be ready to receive these boys and girls who are already traumatized. We need support. We need services. Counseling is important. Inspiring the girls to think beyond the box is very, very important. And giving them hope that tomorrow will be a better day for everybody.
Tomorrow will be a better day for our girl child. And the boy child, by the way, as well. So don't think that we are living. I always say, as we empower the girls, we have to pray the men that will marry as well. Because it's also a challenge being empowered, and then the man is not ready for you. It's a challenge, a big challenge. We have our online viewership. They have raised a lot of questions. I want to ask Josephine to just come in and, just mention a number. And then from there, I'll go to our online virtual panelists. And I'll get to 3 of them. I'll get back to Dr. Tim to share what has been done. And then Jennifer and Margarita will be able to come in. Yes, Josephine.
All right, thank you, Ruth. So there are a number of comments and a number of questions. So I'll just ask the panelists to pick what's relevant for them that they can respond to after I read them. So there's a question from Peter Michael Ouma who says, interesting and useful analysis on why women are not at the center and therefore need to bring them there. But it leaves out one elephant, which if not addressed, all efforts will simply fall flat. And that is the cultural undertones that feed and or manifest in the exclusions that the report highlights. Any comment on this issue? Why this omission from the panelists and the presenters? Then we have a comment on the chat from Angela Bagine, who says, how can we match skills and capacity building with practical assistance, such as value addition machinery? Our women, especially in the rural areas, are shortchanged because the cost of technology is out of their reach. If these women can receive solar drivers, pulp making blenders, etc., and the cost of importing packaging machinery can be looked into, this may hasten the objective we are trying to achieve. These are the comments that are coming in from the YouTube page where we put this up. And the first question, really this is a comment. Dr. Atim Apea, you are spot on. A victims-led approach that portrays women as totally vulnerable doesn't cut it. Let's push for impactful gender support. Then Nanyunja Joanita says, great panel discussions. We are missing out on the local woman's voice though. Nothing for them without them. Tom Mugisa says, better to promote collective actions, especially for smallholder or micro and small-scale enterprises, in order for them to access enabling tools and services, plus proactive, form effective partnerships. Fozzie says, the demand for funding is huge, but the qualifying demand is missing. That is, demand that meets the risk tolerance levels of financiers. In fact, many financiers are desperately looking for investment opportunities and can't find them. Vivian Nagawa says women need to register their businesses if they are to benefit from bigger projects. And a question here from Stefan Baite Kasule. The development terrain is full of donors that are afraid to introduce more productive technology to low-income groups. How can we enhance productivity and quality without embracing efficiency?
Josephine, thank you for those comments. And our viewership online, we are getting so many messages. And actually, even on my phone here, I have some questions and comments. But let's just proceed with, and we'll be requesting after the virtual panelist to ensure that as I get you on, you also comment on a number of these things. Dr. Honorable Dr. Atim, you need to be clear with all these words. You know, politicians are very sensitive. Now you're more vulnerable, more sensitive than before. Let me get back to you.
Yeah.
What did you do with the World Bank support through SDF?
Oh, great. Thank you so much. And to our World Bank partners, thank you for the great work. At least you are reaching down to the rural people. And for me on the SDF fund, my goal was to enroll women, young girls, into tractor driving because I ran about now 3 tractors, and most of them were men driving, and I was asking questions, why is that? And so I partnered with our colleagues in the Muro sub-region, and we have now seen girls driving the tractors, and sending questions to the community that, hey, so these women can actually do this. But also, most importantly, in that grant was the capacity building, the skill development of even the farmers who thought that they knew how to grow rice in the farm. So I think that really that kind of support and grants to women-led businesses addresses the aspect of business development services that in most cases, for example, when you go to the bank, people look at some of those services as software. They only want to see the big things. But those small things that SDF has done in building the rural skills to enable them do what they do best, we have seen an increase in our revenue, but also the confidence, the sense of confidence in the rural women in doing their business. So we really, really appreciate that. And I would urge that I'm glad that somebody actually agreed with me on playing the victim approach. And I'd like to applaud my colleague, Dr. Goodla, that can we start looking at solutions? Because the key messages that has come out from this report, there is nothing new. These are things we have been hearing for ages. But can we start looking at solutions to this problem, which has been with us for quite some time? And I think the best thing is now mobilizing ourselves as women, mentoring our fellow women, lifting the young women and the rural women to move together. And so for me, mentorship is one of the critical aspects that we need to start looking at. And I think our colleagues have started, as alluded to them. For example, we are saying that, we cannot do big businesses, but we have seen women who are in big businesses like Barbara Mulwana. Can we start having women like that mentoring other women and taking us to those spaces where there are very few women? So for me, mentorship is one of the key things. One of the other things that I see is really detrimental is the media. If you see what the media reports on the kind of arguments we make, for example, there's this thing of paid care work. Today, I was listening to a local radio station here in Lira, and they're telling the men, you people, are you aware that you are now supposed to start paying your women for cooking for you? In the aspect of mentorship, not mentor, the partnership, I think we have got to do something with the media on really not stopping per se, because it's their career, but looking at women as assets, not victims and not liabilities. Start reporting things that empowers others. So for me, I still go back to the issue of partnership, and my colleagues have talked about the silo way of doing things. I think it's a high time. We have seen COVID has shown us that if we work together, and that example that Dr. Goodla is saying, I really have to appreciate Goody Leisure Farm. Right now, as I talk, youth in my village, in a Molatar, deep inside, are having, actually one time I was invited to be shown how they are connected to the market and how they are doing things. So small interventions like that, of bringing our women together, our young women together, linking them to the market, the issue of the value addition and all these things will only come when we have the data, we are prepared, and we have the facilities that can be supported. So for me, finally, I might have to run actually, is that as a legislator now, we really need to start looking at empowerment, women empowerment related laws. Of course, we need the other gender-based violence issues, the rights issues. It's okay. But can we start looking for laws that will put money in the hands of women? The budgeting process are coming, and I'm glad that we have very powerful women in all these agencies. can we start demanding that government starts appropriating money in transformative and inclusive enterprises that touches the women directly? Because as government, we also have a role. The monies are coming down, yes, but are we organized? Have we positioned ourselves enough to partake of that money? I know we have the WEP, we have the youth livelihood and all that, but have we bothered, to really do that economic empowerment part of it? That yes, I normally see the quantitative data. So many women have got money and they'll return it back. But has it changed the lives of women? Can we start moving away from the quantitative kind of accountability to the qualitative accountability? If all these investments that government is putting is working, why is it that the poverty rate is actually increasing? And why is it that from this report, women are even still becoming more poorer, and yet we are very entrepreneurial? So I think for me, I ended up saying that from all these key messages and issues that the report have identified, and I think Dr. Goodlad started on a very good note, and I would have the list even longer, but the time is not there. Let us start looking for solution-related engagement, and we move away from the usual cries and all that kind of stuff. I thank you. And apologies, I have to run.
Applaud your excellent submission, Honorable Dr. Apea Atim. Thank you very much. We always...
And you have to count on us. We are so many women in parliament who are waiting for business, for work to do for our constituency. And so we are happy to partner with you and to promote gender-related legislation that economically empowers the women. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable, and we are glad, we are so happy to have you. Thank you for the insights, and I think the World Bank and the partners here and the government will take your comments very seriously. I think you've been spot on, and there's a lot to learn. I want to go to Jennifer. I want to tell our viewers online that we'll be ending at exactly 12:30. So I don't have a lot of time. We're a bit late. Sorry, not 12:30. I want to say 12:40. Yes, sorry, 12:40, because we have a lot to hear from our host. I think it's very important that we hear from the country manager as well. So I want to give Jennifer a minute, Margaret a minute, and then I'll give it up for these ladies to wrap up, and then we would have the country manager coming in here. Yes, Jennifer, you've heard a lot. What do you have to say in a minute?
Well, I'm speaking on behalf of Margarita and myself. I just want to say thank you to the esteemed panelists. I couldn't possibly articulate anything more powerfully and more thoroughly and on point than they have. But I just want to echo a common theme across what I think they've been saying and what the important interventions are to help support women in their entrepreneurship and in their business and employment, is the common need across everything for education, keeping girls in school, having them learn the kinds of things that will link them to sustainable jobs, such as having them study STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and having parents and teachers encourage them to stay in school and to study these things. These are important for them being able to link to wage employment in sustainable sectors that are linked to industrialization of the economy. They also girls and women need to have the basic education for financial literacy to be able to plan and keep books on and grow their businesses into small and medium enterprises so that they can be successful. And also so that girls and women can access credit and the types of skills that they need to better develop their businesses. According to the most recent Uganda National Household Survey, 1/3 of Ugandan women are illiterate. And the good news is that these rates are much better, literacy rates, among girls and young women. But there's a long way to go, and investments in girls' education are going to be crucial. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jennifer and Margarita, for those comments. I want to get back to my panelists here. I am giving you each a minute to ensure that your comments, there are so many issues that came out, but it will be in a minute, because I've already told my viewers that it's 12:40. You know, we're already late by 40 minutes, and it is 12:40, and I want to give a chance for the general wrap-up comments. Let me start with Connie in a minute, and then we'll proceed.
Thank you so much. I just want to propose or to share one of the solutions that UWIL is trying to do, and that is bridging the information gap. We are setting up a Women in Trade platform to provide information on trade on timely basis. Of course, at the right time, we will be able to launch it and share, but as you have heard even from the presenters and the report, there is a challenge of information gap, and we will be providing all the information required as a hub. And that one, for me, is very critical. But the other aspect, I want to encourage our viewers, and especially the women out there, to join associations and groups of women where you can learn together, mentor each other, and plan together, and also access opportunities. Most of the financing we are talking about sometimes is too much money that you require to access, and you need to be together to be able to access it. I know the issue of Corato came out, but what other financiers are saying is that you can get a grant as long as you are a group of women. Let's not think that if you don't have a Corato like land title, you can't access financing. It's possible, and UWIL is trying to spearhead that to see that we link the women into that area. I want to thank once again World Bank for choosing us to launch this report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Connie, I want to go to Angela just in a minute.
Thank you very much. Only 3 points that I would like to emphasize. We realize that culture still constrains quite a lot in terms of gender equality, and as the Minister of Gender, Labour, Social Development, we are stepping up our efforts by engaging our religious leaders, our traditional and cultural leaders, to push for cultural change that protects women's rights but also promotes gender equality. Secondly, I would like to make an appeal to all the women of Uganda that let's balance in terms of our expenses on day-to-day, what we call the recurrent, but also saving and investing in capital kind of assets that can take us to another level. We need to have opportunities for skilling. Let's take advantage of all those opportunities. Let's inspire our girls to dream big. Currently, we are finalizing a project on women economic empowerment in the support of the World Bank. We are counting on everybody's support. Parliament and Cabinet is critical in this discussion. Thank you very much.
Definitely. We need the support from everybody to make it happen for women. Dr. Goodler.
Thank you very much. My message for the women out there is we need to avoid starving in the granary. What do I mean here? Let us be interested in finding out information. Let's say, what are the policies that are supporting us? What are the budget incentives out there that are supporting us? What are the opportunities out there? They have announced the recovery fund for small businesses. Let's go for it. Let us not starve in the granary. Then Angela and Stephen raised something about technology. To me, I think for the start, using incubation centers. I know Uganda Women Entrepreneurs Association Limited has a plan of having an incubation center that would give all of us an opportunity to access technologies we are not able to have in our own means. Then once we grow, we can then go and do that in our own businesses. But also there is a model we are piloting in our villages, the Farmer Service Center model, where we do technology leasing. We've been able to obtain technologies that is the life of a woman that she may not be able to own, but she can borrow at 1,000, use and return, and another woman can also borrow. And I think this would be a good initiative for other value chains out there. There is what you asked and we never had an opportunity to answer. What would you advise a woman to study? To me, based on my own experience, you need to study something that you love and something you are willing to continue studying and continue implementing, but at the same time, you should be able to solve a problem out there. All of us are making money, are being rewarded because we are solving someone's problem, we are doing a job they are not able to do, or we are creating a gain for someone. There is nobody who is going to reward you for not doing a service to them, nobody. And if I was younger, I would go back and study social entrepreneurship. I learned this at an old age of 40 when I was doing my postdoc, the value of social entrepreneurship, working for the good of many. It is a security in its own way. You are many people working together to solve a challenge that is within your area. Right now we work with 112, 900 youth. 70% are women. But the value of the network, we've been able to access certain opportunities because we are a big network, socially connected. And my friend Joanita, you say there is no rural woman here on the panel. The image we have of the rural woman, I am a rural woman, I work with the rural. Agnes is a rural woman. The image, thank you.
Fatima, let me get 1 minute.
Okay, so I'll use my 1 minute to just reiterate why it's important to invest in women and why putting women at the center of Uganda's economic revival is so critical. So 3 points. As we have highlighted, that when you invest in women's entrepreneurial growth, not only does it result in increase in income, when enterprises expand from micro to small, small to medium, and we even heard large enterprises, it also creates jobs. And you know, jobs is such an important agenda in a country which has such a young population. So I think that's very important. Women will play a direct role in increasing income, but also creating jobs through their enhanced entrepreneurial activity. And then the more women enter the labor force, the more we're seeing, you know, untapped potential being realized. There's more productivity, women are more skilled, and this has a direct knock-on effect on the economy. And then my last point is that, you know, Dr. Ateem also talked about, you know, this media article. When we talk about investment in women, it's automatically seen as investment in an individual, while it's to the contrary. So when you invest in women economic empowerment and other initiatives with investment in women, there is an immediate positive impact at the household level. So when there's investment in women, it enhances the health conditions of the household, there is better nutrition, and there's also investment in education, both for the girl child and the boy child. So investing in women is investing in a household. And as we've seen evidence, if you invest in women, it also then allows better economic growth. We're losing billions of dollars in Uganda when we're not realizing the potential for women. So to invest in women will also allow major gains in the economic growth of the country.
Yes, yes, yes. Fatima, you've been spot on. And to our viewers online, this has been a very interesting panel. And I think there's a lot of things that we are picking from here that we can go forward. And I want to thank you very much for agreeing to be part of this journey of trying to see how to put women first. And I think as I conclude this, this particular session, I want to say, during COVID, we have seen so many women at the forefront. And that is the fact. So many women. And I always say, this is our time as women. But the world will judge us. When it was your time, what change did you do? And I want to thank these women. There are particular faces I see. And I want to start with the First Lady, Minister of Education. We have seen her so many times. We had the UN rep, I think Malongo. I'm looking at those faces I saw. Honorable Kaura Korutiu. Remember that time when she was mobilizing COVID resources? We don't forget it. Honorable Jane Acheng, the one for Minister of Health. That face, Dr. Atwine, that face. In Minister of Finance, we have Maris Wanyera. She's so silent, you never see her, but she's a woman working so hard. In Ministry of Education, we have Jane Engeu, Dr. Jane. She's another one who works so hard, you never see her. Auditor General Keto, She's their deputy auditor. You know, women are doing a lot of things, and I want to celebrate them. Our country manager here, she came in COVID. She has been working and working and working. Thank you very much. We celebrate you. And we celebrate so many other ladies there that are doing a lot of interesting work. We might not mention our Prime Minister. You have seen her. She's a lady. You know, she's moving things. And we celebrate her. Our Vice President, she's a lady. We celebrate her. So all these ladies out there,
Hi,
this is our
I'm
time.
Jennifer Salatara. I'm
Let's
senior.
Let's try to do. Rona Magala from Makerere. You know what happened with Makerere University during COVID? And she was moving and moving. So all these ladies, we celebrate you. Keep on working hard and we can change this country. I want to go to the last session now. And we invite our host, the country manager, to share with us our insights and then make the concluding remarks. Yes. You can stay, no problem. Don't worry. Ms. Mukami Kariuchi, please give your remarks.
Well, this has been a really very exciting and engaging event, and I hope that our viewers feel the same. And what I think I would like to do, because in the interest of time we don't have an opportunity to try to review everything that was said, is really just to pick up on the points that came through from the two panels to summarize what we've learned from our guests today. I think important points that came through, starting with one that I think was reflected on in the first panel, is that men have a critical role to play as advocates and partners in women's economic empowerment, and addressing some of the cultural elements that somebody raised in the questions. But women will also have to be advocates for the key actions that the economic update has set out. The fact that we need to move quickly on vaccinations, school opening, and getting MSMEs to create the jobs. I think to do this, we're hearing that obviously productivity enhancing skills are required for women. And examples were given by both PSFU and UWEA of models that they have been rolling out, training people to drive tractors, etc. So I think these productivity enhancing skills were also mentioned as critical for financial access to finance, rather. So the financial literacy and the need for people to understand how best to use the money that they get to have an impact. It was called mathematics, putting mathematics into business, you know, and I think this was a critical point made. A third sort of point in that space is the issue of the value chain analysis, and you know, trying to make sure that whatever you do builds on whatever money you've invested in your business. So I think skills that provide women the opportunity to do these basic analysis and to see how to help them to then transition, I think that was the other message, from micro to small to big to medium and big enterprise, I think being critical. There was a specific mention of the need for us to focus on rural women who are even further excluded in some senses from the tools that are becoming available, and the need for us to do things more smartly in terms of, for example, issues around land. I think the mention of land rights partnerships to empower participation of women more actively in, for example, gaining access to finance. And I think also this point about the digital economy and the opportunities it creates, but the need for more to be done to enable access to the tools to allow us to participate as women more effectively, especially those who are in the rural areas. So I think these were some of the important points that I saw coming through. But I did see that there was an emphasis also on what we need to do to challenge ourselves and to take action ourselves. And the whole point about solutions to what we already know and generating them through mentorship, through media empowerment, and through collective action in order for us to get things done. And so I would just maybe end on a last point, which is about education. We're just about to reopen schools in January, and the whole point there is about human capital. And building human capital is, how do you say, it requires us to focus on every human being in order for Uganda's human capital to be fully utilized. So I think, as you said, this is not about girls versus boys, but it's really pulling those who have been left behind, or giving a push to those who have the opportunity to do more, not just for themselves, but for their families. So I think the point about second chance education, I liked very much, trying to make sure that girls do go back to school and are supported, that women go back to work and are supported, the idea of daycare, for example, and that we also really give an encouragement through part of this mentorship arrangement to girls in STEM. So let me stop there and just say that we as an institution are very pleased, and just say once again, thank you to, lastly, to conclude again, thank you to the moderator, the panelists, and all those who have stimulated the thinking and really pushed us and challenged us to think more about how we can individually contribute going forward.
Wow, wow. Every good thing come to an end. You can no longer be a sweet 16 forever. So we are coming to the end of this. And I want to thank the World Bank for organizing this particular event. And to all the viewers, please, the report is online. You can be able to access it. And to the media fraternity, please disseminate as much as possible. And to everybody, please, thank you for being part of this. Bye-bye, have a nice day, and stay safe. Put on a mask. Thank you, bye.
Okay.
Justine Kevijira. We have a company called Brightways Limited. We do sell fresh foods, fruits and vegetables. We are located in Ikura municipality. It was a passion since childhood. My mother used to sell fresh foods in the market, and I would do help to sell the products with her and would raise school fees. Then it was because of restructuring of the company staff where I used to work. And after restructuring, it was so immediate, and I decided to start to engage into farming. I started by growing cabbages, tomatoes, maize, and other fresh foods. I started by doing roadside vending, and then the authorities in Ikura municipality arrested me for doing that. A bit stressed, but one of the staff at Ikura municipality, the town clerk, advised me to open a selling point, which was defined and big enough and reasonable enough to serve my customers. Generally, capital was organized by myself from my little savings, which I used to save while working. I started as a sole proprietor. Along the way, I employed one person. Then later, we are now with a team of 5 people. I just want to maintain this business and maybe promote it further and grow into exporting company. These are highly perishable products that we deal in, and sometimes they are not bought at the right time, and then we end up losing when they expired. I wish the government can come in and help farmers and train them on value addition I love our parish model. I wish it can take up this project of value addition up to the parish level, mobilize farmers. What I can advise generally, people who are working out there, they should not put all their eggs in one basket. They should look out for small investments, begin humble, and then grow with a business. And then they should have passion for their businesses, create time for their businesses, even mentor their children and maybe other family members, and also employ other people to engage in other etc. activities.